Okay. Sweet. Okay, hi guys. Yes, I'm Bailey. I go to UWS. Yeah. Alright, cool. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my story today, how I found God, and how He helped me through some of the hardest moments of my life. So I'm sure this is probably not an uncommon story, but like a lot of us here probably grew up going to church. Some of us didn't. That's okay. That's cool that you guys are here. We love that you're here.
Thank you.
But I was one of those people who did grow up going to church as a kid. But I will say that my childhood was not exactly like peaceful, as you could say. It wasn't because of like the church or because of my family, but it was because of, this little old thing that people call anxiety and depression. You know that little thing. But for me, that was like incredibly a difficult thing to deal with. So I will say, I'll go more on that a little bit later. So I will say that, growing up in the church, I will say that my faith was my parents' faith. It wasn't my own. If you grew up in the church, your parents, they kind of drag you. They're like, come on, we gotta go, get out of bed, go on, they make you go to church. And I wasn't a big fan of that for the longest time. And wasn't maybe until around 8th grade where things started to change. But I will say, until that time, and continuing on into my early college years, I struggled with anxiety and depression. What that looked like, I'll kind of describe that to you a little bit. It wasn't an all the time thing. It would come and go. But for me, that would often manifest itself in I would be terrified to go to sleep at night. I'd be afraid that if I went to sleep, that I wouldn't wake up again in the morning. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty terrifying thought for a lot of us. And so I would start to get really worked up, and I would start to get sweaty and shaky, and I would be up for late hours of night, not being able to rest, feeling sick to my stomach. You know when you're sick with the flu, if you throw up, you feel better, but I wouldn't throw up, so it would just be a continuous agony for hours and hours, until eventually I was so exhausted that I crashed and fell asleep. And it was in sleep that I found my biggest relief from all of the struggles that came with life. So that was much of my life for most of elementary and middle school, and I continued on and off into high school and college as well. So why am I sharing that today? Well, the only reason that I'm here today is because of Jesus. He came into my life and He taught me how to trust Him. Now, trust, you trust somebody, like you trust the weatherman, okay? You think that the weatherman's going to be right. You'll be, okay, all right, maybe it was sunny day, we're not fully sure. But that's kind of how I trusted God, I guess. It was more of okay, I believe that God can heal me from this, but do I actually trust Him with my pain and my suffering? Am I actually willing to let go of this grip, of this identity of, yes, I have anxiety, I have depression. Am I willing to let that go to God? And for the longest time I didn't. And so this situation continued on for a very long time. However, there came a moment in my life when I had to decide if my faith was going to be my own or if it was going to be my parents' faith still. And that was around 8th grade, like I was saying earlier. I'm not fully organized, guys, but I'm trying. So it was in 8th grade where that's about the time where you start to transition from, believing what everybody tells you to starting to make your own decisions. And I had two different worldviews that I could continue for the rest of my life. Number one, okay, here's number one. So the first worldview was what I was taught in school. In school, they often teach you secular ideas, nothing we do really matters because we're all just a big accident, and that kind of is not a very happy thought. So that was option one, and there's a lot of other stuff that goes along with that, but I won't go into details. And then option 2, worldview 2, was what I was taught at church growing up, was that there's a God who made everything. Everything has a purpose, even all the pain and the suffering. And there's a grand plan in all of it that maybe I don't understand. But through, let's say I'm a very logistically minded person, I had to weigh things out. I had like a scale. I'm like, okay, do I see more reality in the secular worldview that I was taught or in the biblical worldview? And I weighed those two things out, and the more I thought about it, I asked myself all those questions that people are like, don't ask those questions. The questions like, what is our purpose in life? Or, is there really a God out there? Those are the questions that people are like, yeah, don't ask those because we don't know the answer. And so it was in that moment that I started to have a domino effect, which is the best way I can describe it. I thought to myself, okay, it's listed here, sorry. Okay, it says, number 1, either there is no God or there is a God. There's 2 options there, you got a 50-50. 50-50 choice there, okay? So I was like, okay, if God isn't real, then there's no point in anything, so why should I even try? But on the flip side, if God is real, then there must be a reason for everything that I'm going through. And if that's true, if God is real, and Christianity is true, and the Bible is true, then that means that Jesus was a real person. And I'm like, okay, so if Jesus was a real person, then that means that he came here for a reason, and that was to die for my sins. Well, that's a big deal. Like, somebody coming to die for you is like a big deal. You don't treat that lightly. Like, say, like, your best friend, like, in the classic movies, they push you out of the way, and then the car hits that person instead. It's like that. Okay, so I'm like, okay, that's a big deal. I'm like, okay, if Jesus came and he died for me, what am I going to do about it? And that was ultimately the moment that I decided to accept Jesus as my own, and my faith is no longer my parents'. And that was the moment that I started a relationship with God. It wasn't just okay, I believe in God, he's out there, he can maybe help me. It went from that to, God is a real person, and I can either choose to follow him wholeheartedly, or I can continue wishy-washy, kind of not fully living one way or the other. And that was the moment that I decided to accept Jesus into my heart. And I haven't looked back since. Now, how does that relate to my anxiety and depression? Going full circle. Okay. So it was still a struggle for many years. Even up until last year was still a struggle. Kaylin and Beat, and all you guys know. Little Bailey coming to small group crying because she misses her parents. Yep. Yep. So it was still true. But it's been an ongoing learning process, and God has been teaching me how to release my grip on my identity that had been founded in, yes, I have anxiety. I put this label on myself. I have anxiety, I have depression. I have all these issues, and I'm nervous all the time. But to start to actually trust him with those feelings. To not be like, okay, God, I think you can maybe help me with this. Now it was, God, I believe that you're going to help me with this because you say that you can, and I trust that you will. And I could feel this weight coming off. It was no longer my own power that could get me through this. This was God helping me through. And the more I learned to trust him, the more he's giving me peace, and he's giving me a joy like I've never felt before. And I now have a joy in living. That doesn't mean life's always easy. It doesn't mean I still struggle sometimes, but it means that there's hope for tomorrow. So if you're struggling to make it to the next day, just know that God can get you through to the next day. Do you believe that he's going to help you? Or do you just say that he's going to help you? Are you willing to open yourself up to God and say, God, take this away, please? And I believe that you will. You'll be amazed by what he can do. And I'm thankful that God has kept me around and that he's brought me to where I am today.